Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Friday. First full week of preseason is, we'll loosely say underway. A couple of underwhelming preseason games kicked it off last night as the Patriots beat the Panthers 17-13 and the Lions fell to the Giants 14-13. Games largely featuring people you've never heard of making some plays. Although kind of an interesting day for Joe Milton. No matter what, it is fun to have football back. We will talk some news, and then Dennis and I are currently going into a one quarterback redraft mock. So we will see, take a look at that in a little bit and see how some of that shakes out. Dennis, you said you didn't get to catch much of the game. Probably good. That would not have been the Lions' performance you were looking for. We did see Hendon Hooker a few snaps. Any interest in that?
Man, I'm a Hendon Hooker fan, and I was hoping when he was coming out that he was going to get some opportunity. We'll see how it goes. He's a little bit older as a prospect. I think Jared Goff has settled in nicely. Can Hooker be the successor to Jared Goff at the end of this contract for Goff? We'll see. Hooker might just end up being, a quality backup. Until he tore his knee up that last year of college, he was looking really, really good.
Yeah, so I guess a couple of takeaways. I think Hooker, to me, the big thing that he's probably out to prove is that he can be the number 2 in Detroit. They had Teddy Bridgewater last year. He retired. They kind of have stepped out on a limb, just him and Nate Sudfeld left on the quarterback roster. So I think for me, it's a little bit of how, what can he show? 5-9, 36 yards, no picks, not incredibly impressive. 4 carries for 34. Coming off some of those knee injuries, nice to see him moving. In that game, probably the one that caught my eye the most was Eric Gray. We've wondered who, in addition to Devin Singletary, they might use. You had talked about Gray. We didn't see him a lot as a rookie, but 4 for 52 and 2 touchdowns. Part of that, a 48-yard run, so not make too much, but 4 passes for 46 yards. It didn't look too bad. And I think in the other game, the Patriots played 4 quarterbacks and they played a whole lot of other players to get some looks. Drake May, 2 of 3, 19 yards, not a lot from him. Zappe played the most, but Joe Milton, an interesting guy. We wondered how they might use him. 4 of 6, 54 yards, had a passing touchdown, also carried the ball 5 times for 22 yards. Didn't look half bad. Completed his touchdown to Jaquay Jackson. So didn't even know that was one of my receiving options. It's probably a good place to kick off. The Patriots and wide receivers, we were going to be watching that pretty closely. A real even spread. Jalen Polk caught 3 for 14, 3 for 53 for Kayshon Boutte. One guy who didn't catch any passes last night is Juju Smith-Schuster, and he is no longer a Patriot, getting released today. So I guess my first question for you is probably, do you think that's might be kind of the end for him? The other big piece of Patriots news regarding receivers on Tuesday, it looked like they were hot and heavy after Brandon Ayuk. They have withdrawn from that pursuit. Both those things give me pause when thinking about what Drake May has to work with and whether that's an upgrade over what they did to Mac Jones.
Look, it's Hunter Henry time. All right. Hunter Henry, Ramondre Stevenson. That's where you need to go. Now, so releasing Juju, look, that knee was very questionable going into the last couple seasons. What made him good is gone. And it's questionable whether or not he was as good as his numbers anyways. So it makes sense. He's a veteran. You want to give him a chance to maybe catch on somewhere else. So let's go and give him an opportunity. We're rebuilding, and he's not in our plans as he's probably still only like 25 or 26 because he was like 11 when he came into the league. So I'm okay. They've got young talent at wide receiver.
He's 27.
They've got young players at wide receiver. It's time to see what some of them can do. 3 of 6 for 53 yards for Butte. He's got some off-field stuff going on. It's very interesting to see with Butte. What's going to happen? Will he get it together? Will he mature? He's got good physical ability. We'll have to see if that comes about. Jalen Polk, Tyquan Thornton, the venerable Kendrick Bourne there, and then Pop Douglas in the slot. So they've got some bodies. It's in their best interest to not be great this year, but they can't go out and let Drake May or, for that measure, Jacoby Brissett take 60 sacks. They need to protect the quarterback at some level. Oops, I'm on the clock.
Yeah, Juju Smith-Schuster is a signing that never really worked out that well for the Patriots. We didn't see a lot from him last year, and I'm not entirely surprised. There have been a lot of rumblings they were going to move on. I don't know what his market is. He was, he had a good year with the Steelers and then ends up with Kansas City, where I thought he had kind of an underrated year maybe. But he was real bad in a Patriots situation where it should have been a chance to thrive last year. And I just don't know. He might be one of the older 27-year-olds. It'll be interesting. For fantasy, honestly, I'm fine just leaving him on the waiver wire for now because I'm not even sure unless he catches on someplace like I guess if he went someplace like New Orleans, maybe where they've got nothing going on. But you would have said that about New England last year, and it just didn't work out. And he can't beat out some of these guys. I don't know what he really has left. A receiver we would like to have come back is CeeDee Lamb, and Dallas moved him to the reserve did not report list, which is never a good sign. Jerry said he's in no particular hurry to work on a contract, to which CeeDee Lamb replied LOL on social media, which I take to be not a good sign. He's a player. He was wide receiver 1 last year in fantasy that we think has potential to be wide receiver 1 again. Are you getting nervous?
I think as the clock ticks, you get a little bit more nervous every single day. But we also have seen historically Jerry comes around and gets shit done. So I'm not worried yet. I'm still drafting CeeDee Lamb with confidence. I mean, are they going to really roll into the season with Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert, and Zeke Elliott as their offense? Not if they want to win. So I think he'll show up. I think they'll get a deal done, and for me, like if we look back at Ayuk and the Patriots, that feels like brinksmanship to me. I think they have a price that they're willing to pay, and I think that's where it is with the Cowboys. I just think Jerry will fold quicker than the Patriots will because the Patriots know they're not very good. So is it really going to make a ton of sense to invest deeply in Brandon Ayuk? But if Drake May starts looking really good, then it may be something where they go, hey, we're gonna step up and get that guy. I don't know. It still feels like San Francisco gets a deal done with Ayuk to me.
Yeah, I mean they're in their win now window, and you would think that would be something that they would be very interested in retaining him. It'll be, it's starting to make me a little nervous just because I think Lamb has a lot of potential, and it's now no longer just that he's holding out waiting for a contract. It seems like there's actually developing some animus between the two sides, and that's probably what I'm more watching out for. So we will see. Another receiver who is missing some time is Josh Downs, injured his ankle. I think you and I both liked him probably second best behind Michael Pittman among the Colts receiving options. If he is slowed up, this is kind of a crucial period trying to develop chemistry with an offense and with a quarterback that you didn't get to play with a lot last year. Any concerns? Are you reconsidering where you think Downs finishes just for this season?
Yeah, I think so. They're saying 4 or 5 weeks for Downs, high ankle sprain.
Yeah, and those men tend to linger. That's what
they do, and he's slot guy, so you expect they're going to use him in short area. Now, I will say one thing Downs does better, I think, than most slot guys is work down the field. So he does have good speed, and so the potential is there, right? The depth chart has Anthony Gould backing him up, who's a rookie. They also have Ashton Dulin, who's been in Indianapolis. It seems like forever. So could Dulin slide over and take over the slot ahead of Anthony Gould? Probably. It feels like, they show Adonai Mitchell backing up Alec Pierce, Dulin backing up Pittman, and Gould backing up Downs. And honestly, to me, it feels like if Downs is out, I almost feel like they're going to move Dulin into the slot over Gould or Mitchell. So I could be wrong. I have no sources, so take that for what it's worth. But it just feels to me like that would be the better move for the players that they have. But yeah, I like Downs. I think he's got a lot of potential. Again, he's another one of these 5'10", 5'9", 5'10", 180 pounders. I think he's going to have a role in the offense. I think he'll be productive. He's kind of that wide receiver. I think he's a wide receiver 4 with wide receiver 3 upside, with the offense's propensity to run the ball with Taylor and Richardson really being what caps his potential.
Final piece of news. We're still watching some of these quarterback battles. In Pittsburgh, Russell Wilson has been slow. They say he's still number one. Some analysts really still clinging to there's no shot. But Fields getting the start tonight. So far, he is 3 for 3 for 37 yards with 3 carries for 2 yards in this preseason game. Has connected with Najee Harris, George Pickens, and Pat Freiermuth. Always a good start to connect with those guys, I would guess. How are you feeling about this Pittsburgh quarterback competition? Do you think Fields can win it in the preseason?
I mean, he can if Russell doesn't play. That's the old saying, you can't make the team from the training table. If you could mash these two up together, you would have a phenomenal quarterback. You'd have a big athletic quarterback that makes quick decisions and throws the ball. Fields the major issue with Justin Fields is he doesn't make quick enough decisions. And the issue with Russell is that he sometimes, he sometimes he doesn't. Yeah, I don't know what the issue is with Russell. It seems like he's just gotten weird as his career has gotten older, and he doesn't get enough respect as a passer like he used to. Like, he should be able to, he's a great downfield passer, and so with George Pickens, that should be a good connection. I do think the receiving core lacks depth beyond Pickens, so they've got to do some work there. And so it makes sense for them to go after Brandon Ayuk if they think that they're going to be able to do it. But if they think Russ is not going to be it and Fields is a reclamation project, it might not make sense for them to trade assets to get Ayuk.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess we'll see whether they get Ayuk. A lot of rumors are to get Ayuk, they would have to give back Pickens, which feels a little bit like a wash. I mean, other than I like Ayuk better as a receiver, but it doesn't really help their overall. This is still a team that, Justin Fields must be looking around and thinking he's back at the Bears all over again. He has one receiver and he has a tight end. That was, when you're unironically probably going to start Van Jefferson, and no knock against him. He's a solid veteran who's been in the NFL for a while, but I'm not sure that moves a lot of the needle. Roman Wilson's been banged up and as a rookie, so still kind of going through it. And beyond that, I mean, they got Scotty Miller, they got Quez Watkins, they got Calvin Austin. This feels like a lot of gadget players. I don't know what their passing offense would be no matter who the quarterback is, because if you look at Atlanta last year, they had Bijan Robinson to catch the ball. They had Drake London. They had Kyle Pitts. Drake London was only wide receiver 37, and I think maybe Russell and Fields are probably better than Desmond Ridder, but that doesn't mean they're going to throw the ball a lot. Pittsburgh has two running backs that they want to trot out there. They've got tight ends they want to trot out there. I'm not sure there is a lot of great fantasy. I think both these quarterbacks for Pittsburgh will end up playing, and neither of them is going to be better than a quarterback 3 on the season, which is ironic because both of them were pretty good quarterback 2s where they were on crappy teams.
So, because they're likely to split time, do you think it's that they're going to be quarterback 2s or quarterback 3s because neither one will get enough volume? Do you think either can be a quarterback 2 on a points per game basis?
They probably can. I think what scares me more for Fields is he has struggled with turnovers at times. He probably is capable of making bigger plays. I think Russell Wilson was not fun to watch last year, but he was quarterback 14 because he didn't turn the ball over. He ran if he needed to, and he just took the dump offs that were available and moved the ball steadily. As somebody who's a Broncos fan, I can tell you it was not thrilling to watch. But it was, reasonably effective. So I would not be totally shocked to see him be in the QB2 range, when he's out there. I think they're going to end up splitting. I feel like that's what happened with Pittsburgh last year. They got dissatisfied sometimes by what they saw from quarterbacks, and they wanted to move them around. I don't know if either of these guys is going to be able to make a case to be the long-term starter there. I don't know how, this is now year 3 of us saying we're going to rehab Russ's image so that he'll be ready to cook. And, I don't know if I totally buy into him being.
Look, Russ is cooking hungry man TV dinners. We're not getting a filet mignon. We're past that stage of his career. He may have Sierra as a wife, but he cooks like a bachelor.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it for our news. So I'm going to go ahead and pop up this draft board to the stage so that we can take a look at what all is up there. So we're doing, getting toward redraft season. So we have a pretty common roster for a lot of people that play redraft. Let me look at hold on real quick and remember the roster setting I set. We have one QB. This is a single QB, not super flex, which is why you haven't seen that many QBs go. We will do super flex mock a little bit later, but starting lineup for these teams would be QB, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, tight end, 2 flexes, and then I gave 7 bench positions. So 16 round draft, 12 teams. I went near the back. Dennis went up near the beginning. A couple of people weren't ready when we quite kicked off, so they ended up on a couple of auto picks. But CeeDee Lamb going 1-1. He was wide receiver 1 last year. I think he has potential to be wide receiver 1. Christian McCaffrey, who was running back 1 last year, and then Tyreek Hill, who was number 1 overall in the NFL Players Top 100. Dennis, what do you think about those kind of 3 guys in a start in this format?
I think you can pretty much juggle them in any order that you want, and until the season starts, not be wrong. I love CeeDee Lamb. I just think that he's going to be in an offense that is going to be pass heavy. When Rico Dowdle and an old Zeke Elliott are the basis of what your offense is, I think it's pretty easy to know that they're going to lean on the passing game. McCaffrey is an outstanding pick, but the truth of the matter is he's 28 years old now. He's coming off a 450 touch season last year. He's built different. I get that, but he's still not a super big back. He's only 5'11", 209, 215, somewhere in that range. But there's no arguing his impact on the game, what he can do when he is on the field, whether it be running or passing. So I almost feel like he's the default 101, but it's I can't argue with taking CeeDee Lamb. And then Tyreek Hill is that Dolphins offense is just bonkers when it comes to passing production and how they scheme that up for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So I'm okay with Tyreek Hill at 3.
Yeah, and I think Hill has a lot of explosive upside. Next, we got to you, and you did not hesitate to grab your boy from the Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown. What makes you excited about him?
So Chase and Jefferson were sitting there, and most often of those 3, I go Chase. He's got a better quarterback situation. It feels like Cincinnati is going to be pass heavy this year. And so as I sat there and looked at it, I was just like, what am I where do I want to go? Sorry, I'm looking at my team to draft as well. I think I'll draft a tight end here. And so I did go Amon-Ra to feed my Lions fandom. I think Chase has the odds over Jefferson, I think, to be the more likely 104 in production. But Amon-Ra has been putting up numbers for years now. He's in the same system with the same quarterback. They actually kind of got weaker at wide receiver. I know they got Laporta, they've got Gibbs, they've got Montgomery, but the outside receivers are Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that's pretty much it. We'll see if Jameson Williams takes that step we keep hearing about. They've got a couple other guys, Khalif Raymond, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who has kind of not been getting great press. So for me, I think that Amon-Ra is going to have another 1,400-yard season.
Yeah, and I like him, and I like his potential. He was wide receiver 3 last year, so going as the third wide receiver off the board isn't crazy. Some people have pointed out that as much as we like Jamar Chase, we haven't always seen these huge fantasy outputs from him. We'll see. I still like him a lot this year. He went next. Then Justin Jefferson, a guy who we like a lot as a receiver, but has kind of a middling quarterback situation. Puka Nacua, big breakout last year. That kind of capped off. We had 6 receivers in the first 7 picks, which kind of made sense to me. And then get Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, and then A.J. Brown. I was at 11, so I'll get to mine in a minute. But in that group between you and me, what kind of stood out to you? Is that about what you would expect?
Puka feels a bit high, and now that it's twofold. Yes, he's the perfect wide receiver for that offense, but so is Cooper Kupp. He was essentially the Cooper Kupp replacement when Kupp was out. Well, Kupp is back healthy, and it seems like Puka's a little banged up now during training camp. And I know that offense has produced 2 high-level receivers before, and it may very well again. But I'm more comfortable with Puka back around the turn as opposed to up there at the 107. If I was at 107, I'd have probably went Hall or Robinson as the pick there. I think that's a great spot for the running back, sort of that just starting the second half of the first round. You've got 2 bell cow running backs. There's not a ton of bell cow running backs in the NFL anymore, and Hall and Robinson are definitely 2 of them.
Yeah, I like those guys. When it got to me, I at 11. I saw Jahmyr Gibbs there, and I kind of jumped on that. I thought about going with Taylor, but I really like Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think we're going to see another pretty big year from him. So excited to see him. So I snagged him, and then Jonathan Taylor went right behind me. But what do you think of those last 2 picks to round out the first round?
I think that's kind of where those guys are going. Jahmyr Gibbs seems to be poised to take a step from last year. I know we've got David Montgomery there, and he is a solid back, if not spectacular. But we've seen Montgomery defer to Gibbs and let him, there are times when I think it was called for to put Montgomery in because he's the bigger back when they're down close, and Gibbs got him down there. And Monty has been like, hey, no, keep the kid in there and let him get his flowers. So I like that. And we're banking, I think, a little bit on Jonathan Taylor getting a bit of a bounce back after these last couple years of being, just a tad off. I like Taylor a lot. He's probably the last. I guess I do. There's a couple more backs that are next tier that would probably fall into the bell cow space, but Taylor he's just younger, bigger, faster than pretty much all of them. So I don't have any quibble with those picks.
Then in the second round, Garrett Wilson went first. I was kind of looking, I would have taken him if he was there, but with him off. I looked at my wide receivers. I thought about going that, but ended up taking Saquon Barkley. I think he's going to have a big year with the Eagles, and I liked having those two guys at running back. Then Devontae Adams went. Marvin Harrison Jr., the first of the rookies, goes. Then Kyron Williams, Drake London, Sam Laporta, the first tight end, but was tight end one last year. Travis Etienne. You got Mike Evans. Then we had Derrick Henry, who moves over to the Ravens. First quarterback, Josh Allen, kind of going down there, but could be a positional advantage. And then Chris Olave. What stands out to you in the second round?
I love getting Garrett Wilson. I just think he's when you look at the receivers that go after him, you got Adams, older in a terrible quarterback situation. You got Marvin Harrison, who's a rookie, and we've seen rookies come in and have some phenomenal years. Is it going to happen with Kyler Murray? Maybe, maybe not. But I think I'd take Wilson over Harrison. Drake London, we're banking on a breakout with Kirk Cousins now in Atlanta. Evans, I got Evans at the 209. I'm still buying into Evans. I think he's a little bit undersold. Would he have made it back to me at the 304? Maybe, maybe not, but I like Evans. One QB, it's tough. I don't know. I like to want to be a waiter on quarterbacks. I did go kind of early because I felt like my quarterback gives a little bit of a positional advantage. But if I were, looking at that, the players that worry me the most are Kyron Williams. Can he hold up to the volume that he looks likely to get? I know they brought in Corum to relieve some pressure on him, but it feels like he is going to get a ton of volume and break down because he's a 5'10", 199-pound back. And then Laporta seems poised to be a uber productive tight end, but he scored a lot of points on touchdowns, and I'm not sure that he's going to get that again this year. So I'd have probably been a little more comfortable waiting 5-6 more picks before grabbing Laporta.
Then we get the third round. Devon Achane goes first, then Josh Jacobs, who moves over to Green Bay. Travis Kelce goes to John there. Then you grab Nico Collins. Stephon Diggs goes. Brandon Ayuk. Jalen Waddle. Then we got Hurts and Mahomes. Not bad there in the third. Isaiah Pacheco. I was kind of glad that there was a run there. There wasn't a receiver because I had waited on receiver. I grabbed DJ Moore, just got a big contract. I like him still to be the top dog in Chicago. And then Deebo Samuel went. I think the thing that stood out to me a little bit in that round is I probably would have preferred Ayuk and Waddle before I would have looked at Diggs, just because of the transition where he is going. But what other things stand out to you in the third round?
Yeah, I'm torn on Deebo because, yes, he's very productive, but it feels like Ayuk is the better receiver, and there are a lot of weapons. And we said it last year with McCaffrey, Ayuk, Deebo, and Kittle. Somebody is always going to be left out each week. Who is it going to be? We don't always know that. So I don't know that I would have went Deebo even there. I like the DJ Moore pick. I think he's gonna do well. Isaiah Pacheco is an interesting one because the way he runs, he tends to set himself up to get dinged up, and he wasn't all that involved in the passing game, but we've heard a ton of news about him in the passing game this year, and it looks like he's set up to be a 3-down back, but he still feels like a sub 1,000-yard rusher, even if he gets a little bit of an uptick in passing production. So I do like Pacheco, but I don't know. I waited in my draft. I waited on running back. I don't know if I would have, if I was waiting on running back, I think I'd have kept waiting instead of taking Pacheco. The Texans wide receiver group is one that both puzzles and troubles me. I know I grabbed Nico. I took the first of the Texans wide receivers. I just feel like he's probably going to be the one that leads in production. But Diggs is there, and there is also
Tank Dell.
Tank Dell. And so as my wide receiver 3, I think I'm okay with that, just because, we've seen Teddy Bridgewater support 3 top 25 wide receivers. And I got to tell you, hot take here, CJ Stroud is much better than Teddy Bridgewater. So that being said, even if Diggs has there may not be a 14 or 1,500 yard receiver in this group, but I could see a couple of them getting 1,000 yards, and a couple of them getting over 8 touchdowns. Who those couple are, that's going to be a great question. So I tend to lean Collins over Diggs because Diggs is older, and it feels like he's going to be disgruntled this year, even though they moved all of his money to this year. And as well as Tank Dell played, I'm still team big wide receiver. So Nico Collins is my guy.
Yeah, I kind of, I feel like so Tank Dell went 2 full rounds basically later because Diggs went at 305. Tank Dell went at actually 2.5 rounds later, went at 508. And I kind of like that value a little bit better. I've come more around. I'm not shocked to where you took Collins, especially coming off a wide receiver 1 season, seemed to have a lot of good chemistry with Stroud at the end of the season. But I kind of still think Collins and Dell might end up as the top 2 guys. We've seen wide receivers changing teams in year 1, not always maximize their what they had done previously. And I think we still have some questions about Diggs. Was it all the kind of change of scheme, or were there other things kind of going on? Because his production really fell off. He finished as wide receiver at 9, I believe, but his production the second half of the season was notably different. And those are questions.
I think he was wide receiver 44 the second half of the season.
Yeah, he and Gabe Davis weren't that much different, and but you're paying a huge premium. I am not sure if Davis may have just gone. No, I don't think Davis has even come off the board yet in his new location. Well, Dennis, why don't you? We're now getting close to the end. We're making our way through 13, and Davis just goes off. Maybe it's because I mentioned he hadn't come off yet. What things stand out for me looking down the board? We can see kind of a variety of strategies. Being 1 QB, I'll just say I waited a little bit longer. I think there is a pretty deep group of QBs. File and get one. I waited till the 7th round. He was QB5 last year. I think still has some top 12 potential. We saw people hitting running backs early. We saw people really hammering wide receivers and pass catchers early. What is the kind of preferred strategy? And as you're seeing some of these strategies bear out all the way through, which strategies do you feel like are paying off?
So I usually in 1 QB, I'm often wanting to wait, but in round 4, Lamar Jackson was sitting there, and I thought, I think I'm going to go ahead and just take him. He's coming off a MVP season. He's got all of his weapons. Let's roll one more time. And then I grabbed a couple running backs with Walker and Harris before I went back into the wide receiver market. Strategy-wise, I don't hate Team 9. They went Robinson, Harrison, Mahomes, Mixon, Kamara, and it might be my age, but I do still look at these running back heavy teams and I'm like, oh, that looks nice. But by and large, it's go wide receiver. So team 6, Jefferson, Laporta, Ayuk, Metcalf, Cooper, Kirk to start. That's a really nice wide receiver heavy build. So I don't hate that. Some of these strategies, we do have a couple auto picks, and so stacking Caleb Williams with the veteran Tua Tagovailoa, see what shakes out. The downside is that in a 1 QB league, a lot of times people will draft that backup quarterback and think, oh, well, if they're playing good, I'll just trade them. But a lot of times we don't find the same value for that quarterback. So that can be a little bit, if I'm drafting probably one of the top 7 or 8 quarterbacks, then I'm not going to draft a backup quarterback. I'm going to stick with the wide receivers and running backs. So I did draft Hunter Henry. What round are we in? The 14th. I drafted Hunter Henry as my second tight end. I got Dalton Schultz as my first. And really the reason I drafted Henry was because I went with Schultz as my first. I think Schultz will be productive, but there are a lot of weapons in Houston, and Schultz may not be consistent. Other guys that I considered maybe waiting on were like Tyler Conklin, but it doesn't Aaron Rodgers hasn't put up huge numbers consistently for tight ends, and so I am a little bit nervous about that. So I wanted to add a second tight end. Hunter Henry is, the way things are going in New England, Henry may end up being the show in New England. And he had, I think, 8 touchdowns last year. So he's still a consistent producer at the tight end position. So stacking that. Kyler Murray with his injury history, backing him up with Jared Goff there on team 6. That makes sense to do. Though after drafting Laporta, I don't know that I would have went Cade Otton. I'd have probably not went with a second tight end. Man, we're at that point where the draft is, oh, there's one of my guys. It's rolling back to us pretty quickly.
Yep. So now you've completed your team. Getting on there. I just completed mine too. I took 2 good running backs early. Then I went a couple of wide receivers. I liked where I grabbed Evan Ingram there. He was tight end 2 last year. Really, with all the turnover among the Jacksonville receivers, I actually feel the best about Evan Ingram. There's a team that I don't think we automatically think of as the tight end being their lead receiver, but he had 93 receptions last year, had over 100 targets, and I really like his potential. And I thought that, that was probably the end of a tier. Excuse me, he had 114 receptions last year for 963 yards. Was, as I mentioned, tight end 2. We've seen the offenses from their coach utilizing tight ends in the past. Then I grabbed Swift. That was kind of when I was looking at running backs coming around. I was debating about going back to receiver, but I thought receiver was a little bit deeper. Swift was probably the last of a top 24 running back I saw available, and I liked having 3 options in there. I think he could do some good things with Chicago. I mentioned grabbing Jordan Love. Then I tried to hammer some different receiver and running back options going down there. I only took 1 tight end. I think you talked about I did end up taking a second quarterback in the last round, Bryce Young, because he was still sitting there. And round 16, kind of last bench spot, he's a guy I'm curious to see the development with Dave Canales, and I thought that could be, kind of fun. And quarterback just feels like a position too where we have so many shock injuries. I remember last year, I think it was in our in one of the redraft leagues I was in, it might not have been our league. I just took Joe Burrow, and I didn't even really worry about taking a second quarterback. And boy, did I end up screwed in the middle of the season. So sometimes I will actually, tight end to me feels more like a position where you play the waiver wire, because once you're past a certain spot, I don't imagine I'm taking Ingram out unless he gets injured or his bye week. But I grabbed Ridley. I grabbed Romeo Dubs to give myself a little Green Bay stack. Green Bay, not exactly a team where you can lock into the one like premier receiver for that, stack that we typically think of, but I liked getting Dubs there. I got Cortland Sutton. I like that. Later, I grabbed Josh Palmer. I think, Dennis, you and I have talked about someone's got to catch passes for the Chargers. He's a veteran. We've actually seen him lead the Chargers in targets and receptions, even when they still had Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So I think he's kind of an under the radar. And then round 12, I felt pretty great around that. Round 14, I grabbed Darnell Mooney. So I felt like I gave myself some potential and upside receivers. And I did the same thing with running backs, Jerome Ford, Jaleel McLaughlin, Khalil Herbert. None of them are guys that are probably going to lead their backfields, but all of them are guys that have given an opportunity to have some potential.
Yeah, I kind of looked at running back the same way. After grabbing Walker and Harris, both of them feel like they're going to get significant volume. But Chase Brown is making some noise down in Cincinnati, and we saw him be productive on low touch volume and be very explosive. And if he steps up and, he's 5'9", 209 pounder. So he does have the ability to handle 14 or 15 touches a game. And he showed explosiveness last year. Jalen Wright, I drafted as my fourth running back. And that was more of a, he's probably third, maybe fourth on the depth chart in Miami. But he's a running back that is another clone of the running backs that are being successful there. Decent enough size, more explosive than most backs in the NFL, okay pass catcher. So he feels like he's the heir apparent to Raheem Mostert. So if something were to happen, Wright has the ability to step right in. And then my fifth running back I grabbed, Elijah Mitchell. I know he's dinged up a little bit right now in training camp, but we've seen him step in when McCaffrey is, on a break or dinged up a little bit. So I don't mind having him more. That's kind of using the draft other people's handcuff strategy, both with Wright and with Elijah Mitchell. So I kind of went that route. I grabbed Michael Wilson in the last round as my wide receiver 8. It seems like his issue is health, and he's going to be playing across from Marvin Harrison Jr. and have Trey McBride, who had a phenomenal breakout year last year. And then you got James Conner in the backfield. It feels like Michael Wilson is kind of going to be the forgotten man for the defenses and have a potential to have a productive year if, and this is a big if based on last season and his college career, if he can remain healthy.
Yeah, it is fun to be back in draft season, getting ready for redraft. We did our quarterback rankings on Tuesday. Next week, we will keep going through that. We're going to do running backs. Our top 50, we'll do 50 to 26 on Tuesday and top 25 on Friday, wide receivers the following week. Then we'll wrap up with tight ends and another mock draft. I do think, it'll be interesting, too, to see how some of these draft values change as we start to see injuries or perhaps player movements, trades, and see some of these preseason performances getting a feel. I think there are going to be some veterans that get set free. I feel like I've been adjusting my rankings almost every day when we've been going through based on things, re-looking at them. So it's been a lot of fun. Dennis, as we head into the weekend, first full weekend of preseason, so you guys probably excited to see that. But if you have some free time on your hands, what can they do to fill that free time?
Well, they can go to their favorite podcast platform, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable, hit that like and that subscribe button, give us a little love. Go ahead, check out our back catalog. We've reviewed all 32 teams in the NFL. We've started to do our positional breakdowns. We have some dynasty content, all kinds of phenomenal, great fantasy football information. And I apologize for the chainsaw, everybody. I got a tree coming down, so.
Well, before we get out of there, we did get a question from Fred about DK Metcalf. I will say for me, I still think he ends up as the top receiver in Seattle, but probably a little bit like last year in the wide receiver 2 range.
Yeah, I'm okay with him. I think that's the wide receiver 2. He's going to have some big games. So you have to, if you're drafting DK Metcalf, you're along for the ride. There's going to be some big games. There's going to be some little games. But this new offensive coordinator, very, very, very proficient passing offense at the University of Washington. He's coming into a team. While Geno Smith and Sam Howell may not be top-tier NFL quarterbacks, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Tyler Lockett have shown themselves to be very, very good NFL receivers. Well, at least Metcalf and Lockett. We got JSN, who's full of potential. But DK is phenomenal. He's got tools that you can only build in a lab. And I think if I'm coming into that offense, I'm going to figure out how to do what DK Metcalf does well. So I'm good. Second round, or probably I almost think top 15, top 16.
Well, and if you're keeping track of preseason games that are underway, that C.J. Stroud to Tank Dell connection is alive and well. They connected on a 34-yard touchdown pass as the Texans lead the Steelers 13-0. So fun to have some games to talk about. Dennis and I will probably pick a few highlights from some of the games when we get together on Tuesday, and we will talk about number 50 to 26 in our running back rankings. So something to look forward to. We are getting ever closer to the season, now under a month away. It's great to have football back. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. See you on Tuesday.
Sign.